You are listening to Lighthearted, the official podcast of the United States Lighthouse Society. My name is Jeremy D'Entremont. Welcome. Today is December 15th, 2024, and this is episode 304 of Lighthearted. My co-host today, back after just a couple of weeks, is Ben Ridings, curator for Cape May MAC, the organization that manages the Cape May Lighthouse in New Jersey. Hey, Ben.
Hi, Jeremy. How are you?
I'm good. Just trying to stay dry and warm today. I think it's stormy up here in New Hampshire, as I think it is down in New Jersey where you are. Is that right?
That is correct. And last time we recorded, I think it was also raining in New Jersey. So it's just a weird thing that happens.
Does it always rain in New Jersey?
No. In fact, we had about 2 months with no rain. So if that happens again, I'm going to try to be your co-host so you can make it rain down here.
Okay. I was thinking you're not that far from Philadelphia. And of course, it's always sunny in Philadelphia, right? So
Yes, correct.
But anyway, so we're trying to record here before either of us lose power because it is quite stormy and windy out today. So in a few minutes, we'll listen to a conversation about Fire Island Lighthouse, which I think of as one of the iconic lighthouses on Long Island in New York. I think of Fire Island as one of those classic tall brick lighthouse towers of the East Coast. There's a bunch of them. Of course, Cape May, your lighthouse, is another one. I finally made it to Cape May early this year, and I made it to Fire Island Lighthouse for the first time last year with the U.S. Lighthouse Society tour. Have you ever been to Fire Island, Ben?
You know, I'm a little ashamed to admit it, especially on a lighthouse podcast, but I haven't been to any New York lighthouses, although I hope to rectify that in 2025.
Good to hear it. You know, I was thinking back when I was your age, and it's hard for me to remember that far back, but I hadn't really visited all that many lighthouses. So you've got a ways to go. But again, as I always say, it's not a competition either. You know, I think we're out for quality rather than quantity. But
Yes.
Yeah. But Fire Island is a great one, so I hope you get to go there sometime. And Montauk, not too far from there, too. Another great Long Island lighthouse. So we'll get back to Fire Island Lighthouse in a minute, but I wanted to ask you something. I saw online that there was recently an event at the Emlyn Physic Estate, which is managed by Cape May MAC, an event to celebrate the start of the Christmas season, I believe. And I'm wondering if you took part in that event, Ben.
Yes. So the Saturday before Thanksgiving every year, we have the start to our Christmas season with a big tree lighting ceremony at the Physic Estate. The house is open for free for people to tour. We have a brass band playing for about an hour and a half before we light the tree. Santa comes, which is always exciting.
Of course.
And I think I talked about this when you had me as your guest about how I like being first person interpreting historic people. So I was actually walking the estate as the Victorian Dr. Emlyn Physic with my top hat and cape and all that fun stuff. And I just enjoyed talking to people as Dr. Emlyn Physic, and they were asking questions, and I would answer them as best as I could.
Do any of them think you really are Dr. Physic and maybe, you're time traveling or something, or maybe not?
Some of the kids did. They also thought I was Ebenezer Scrooge a couple times, but that's okay.
Right. Well, they're thinking of the season, I guess, but that's pretty funny. It must be a lot of fun, really.
Yes. And of course, my 4-year-old daughter, now 5, was there. And every time she would see me, she would yell in the crowd, "Hey, look, it's Dr. Physic."
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So, but she knows it's her dad, right? Or does
Yeah,
she?
of course. She does.
Okay. So she's having fun with it. That's good. She's a smart aleck for a 5-year-old, it sounds like.
Well, yeah, she is my daughter.
Well, so to change the subject, or sort of a little bit, is anything else planned this holiday season at any of the Cape May MAC properties, including the Lighthouse?
Yes, we have a gamut of Christmas tours, walking tours, trolley tours. The highlight of our holiday season, though, over Christmas is our Christmas Candlelight Tour. We've been doing this tour since 1974.
Wow.
It's a walking tour throughout gaslit Cape May, and people visit homes, inns, bed and breakfasts, churches, and hotels where you step inside and see interiors beautifully decorated for Christmas.
Wow. So it's a 50th anniversary for that event. That sounds really cool.
Yes.
Something we've done on the podcast in the past, but haven't done much lately, is talking about things that have happened on this date in Lighthouse history. So Would you happen to know if anything interesting has happened on December 15th in Lighthouse history?
Yes, as a matter of fact, on December 15th, 1874, two almost identical lighthouses in Southern California were both lighted for the first time, Point Furman and Point Wanimi. That means that today is the 150th birthday for both of them. The original building at Point Wanimi was replaced in 1940 by the concrete building that stands today. And sadly, the original lighthouse building was torn down.
Yeah, that's right. I've been there and was sad that the original lighthouse wasn't there. But the original Point Furman lighthouse in San Pedro still stands and is open to the public. I've been there, and it's now a really beautiful museum inside. The architecture of those lighthouses is regarded as an example of stick style. It's an early form of Victorian architecture, and the design was used for 6 lighthouses, and one of them is not far from you, Ben, Hereford Inlet Lighthouse in New Jersey.
Yes, I actually looked at pictures of Point Furman, and they are strikingly similar to the Hereford Inlet. And I'm partial to the stick style because that is the style of the Emlyn Physic Estate.
Aha. Okay. Yeah, I didn't realize that. So let's move along to today's interview. So please help me out, Ben.
Sure, Jeremy. Long Island, New York is home to more than 20 lighthouses. The tallest by far is the one at Fire Island, which is 168 feet tall. From the top, on a clear day, you can see all the way to the New York City skyline in the distance.
Fire Island is one of a chain of barrier islands running along the south shore of Long Island. The first lighthouse on Fire Island, built in 1826, was a 74-foot-high stone tower. It was considered too short, so the much taller brick lighthouse that still stands was built in 1858. The designer was General James Chatham Duane, an engineer for the Lighthouse Board, and Duane had a hand in the design of many lighthouses on the East Coast, including Portsmouth Harbor Lighthouse and Whaleback Lighthouse, which are both very close to me.
The new tower was fitted with a powerful first-order Fresnel lens, which rotated to produce a white flash every 60 seconds. For many years, the flash of the Fire Island Lighthouse was the first sight of land for countless European immigrants coming to America.
Fire Island Lighthouse was decommissioned as an aid to navigation on December 31st, 1973. It was replaced by an automatic light on top of a water tower. During the rest of the 1970s, many local citizens banded together to save the light station.
The Fire Island Lighthouse Preservation Society was formed in 1982. 4 years later, on Memorial Day in 1986, the lighthouse returned to duty as an aid to navigation. In 2006, ownership of the property was officially transferred to the Society. Visitors can tour the museum in the Keeper's House with 2 floors of exhibits. Visitors can also view the old first-order Fresnel lens, which is on display in a separate building.
Yeah, it's really among the best lighthouses to visit that I've ever seen, and they have a top-notch group of staff and volunteers. Our guest today, Jonathon Gaare, became the executive director of the Fire Island Lighthouse Preservation Society earlier this year.
Jonathon graduated from the University of New Hampshire with a degree in environmental conservation and sustainability, and he spent a summer studying in New Zealand. His experience since then includes 2 years as an urban forestry and marine community educator in New York and time as a historic carpenter for the National Park Service.
Jonathon stopped by my home here in New Hampshire, the famous Bluefish Boulevard recording studios, on his way back from a trip to Maine, and we recorded this interview at my kitchen table. So let's listen to my conversation with Jonathon Gaare now. I am here today at the famous Bluefish Boulevard recording studios, which I actually haven't used in a while. Regular listeners to the podcast might remember that I used to record here often, but it's otherwise known as my home, my kitchen. And I am here with Jonathon Gaare, who is the executive director of the Fire Island Lighthouse Preservation Society in beautiful Long Island, New York. And I got to visit there for the first time last year. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. So welcome, Jonathon. Thanks for doing this today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Beautiful recording studio. And yeah.
Well, I do my best. And I saw there are a couple of guys working across the street. If anybody hears any banging or anything, there's a little bit of construction type work going over there, but hopefully it'll be okay. So, Jonathan, you became the executive director of the Fire Island Lighthouse Preservation Society not that long ago. I think it was early this year.
Yeah. June, yeah.
Okay. And before we talk about the lighthouse and things related to it, let's talk a little bit about your background. I'm curious what led you to that position. You graduated from the University of New Hampshire, which is like 15 to 20 minutes from where we're sitting right now, a place that's quite familiar to me. So what did you study there?
Yeah, it's great to be back up north for a visit. I studied sustainability, environmental science. I wanted a super broad undergraduate degree that I can kind of poke my hand in every little field.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I spent 4 years up in New Hampshire. I loved every second of it.
Yeah.
Got to ski every weekend, and I studied pretty hard too.
Yeah, cool. It sounds like you're into a lot of stuff like skiing and biking and things like that. Yeah, you just rode your bicycle here today. Yeah. Not from Montauk, in case people are wondering.
I rode my bike from my house to Montauk a few times, though. So
how far is that?
It ended up being like 130 in a day. So I did it twice.
130
miles, yeah.
130 miles.
I like moving, yeah.
Round trip? Or
one way.
Holy cow. That's impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should talk to Edward Pepin in England, who biked to like over 300 lighthouses, I believe it's 100 days. Yeah, I think you'd have a lot to talk about.
Someone will fund that for me, please.
Well, that'd be really cool. Who knows? You never know who might be listening.
Yes.
So I think it was while you were at UNH, you actually spent a semester studying in New Zealand. Is that correct?
So beautiful there. The people are amazing. The landscapes, the ideal situation for a place like myself, I think. Mountains and the oceans and wind, water. I studied through an awesome program called EcoQuest Education Foundation. I want to give them a shout out if they're listening. They learned so much in that place. I spent a semester there, and we studied the ecology, the biodiversity, indigenous cultures, and we got to travel around the whole country by van. And we stayed at, different ecological sites. And it was a life-changing moment for me, most definitely.
I'll bet.
Yeah.
I've heard such good things about New Zealand. It looks so beautiful.
They got lighthouses too, so you never know.
They do. In fact, one of my favorite lighthouse books is called Guiding Lights by Shona Riddell, who lives in New Zealand. I've had her on the podcast.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and U.S. Lighthouse Society has run tours to New Zealand, including, I think it was last year or the year before, and next time there's one, I hope maybe I can kind of be a stowaway on one of those. Yeah.
Let me know.
Yeah. Oh, I will. So what are some of the other things that kind of led you to your position as the director of Fire Island?
Yeah. I worked actually in government my whole life. Formal jobs, and it was always in land management, science, education, and on the side I've always worked in construction. And make a little money on the side, and so I fell into the lighthouse actually through my first year working for the National Park Service there. So anyone that doesn't know, the Fire Island Lighthouse is part of the Fire Island National Seashore. We're a partnership. I was a park ranger and an interpreter at the lighthouse for a good couple months, maybe 5 months perhaps, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the people there, the building, the history, and of course the location on the beach. So can't beat that.
Yeah, that's pretty special. Your predecessor as director was Tony Feminella, is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. And he's he stepped down, but he's been such a mentor to me. And he's still on the board. He's a trustee. He's there 3 days a week. He gives school group tours. Every Tuesday, so he's an awesome mentor and a good friend.
Yeah. I've had a lot of correspondence with him, and he's been very helpful. So that's great. You had fairly big shoes to step into there, but
indeed. And this is it's a business at the end of the day, and I don't have a degree in business. I'm degrees in the sciences, so learning a lot.
Right.
Fun.
Well, business to me is the least fun part of it all. So I understand
Hey, you
that.
said it.
Yeah, yeah. So I do want to get back to some of your ideas, kind of looking forward in the future with Fire Island Lighthouse and about lighthouses in general. But let's talk specifically about the lighthouse. It's really one of the iconic lighthouses of Long Island, Montauk, of course, being another one. But Fire Island, for lighthouse buffs, it's up there. It was on my bucket list until I finally got there spring of last year. So what would you personally say makes Fire Island Lighthouse? Well, you've kind of already said it to some degree, but what makes it special for you?
So much. I mean, right now, and I think it's just the people there, the volunteers, the passion. We were over 140 amazing volunteers, and they all want to be there. They love it. And I think Fire Island Lighthouse is actually pretty unique in the sense that it's right next to a major city, New York City, and Long Island's heavily populated. So the amount of visitation and the amount of people we could, give them a place to go to and, smell the ocean breeze and look at the beacon and give them history. I think that's the best part about Fire Island, just the proximity to a very urban center, but still having that peaceful place to come in the morning or watch the sunset. So,
Yeah. Well, as you said, it's always comes down to the people, whether you're talking about the history or the present at these places, the staff and volunteers and the visitors.
The best.
What makes it so special. So, as I said, I was there last year. It was May of last year. I helped lead a U.S. Lighthouse Society tour to Long Island, and of course we went to Fire Island. When we were there, sadly, the lighthouse tower was closed for climbing. We did get to, of course, go on the beautiful lens exhibit. I want to talk about that also. But what is the status of the tower? Is it open for climbing now?
No, we are back in action. It actually was closed in March of 2023. Part of the shotcrete, the fascia, kind of like siding of a house, slid off the exterior of the tower. The tower was completely structurally sound, but out of an abundance of caution, we want to really make sure.
Yeah.
So we were closed down from March until August of 2023. And then ever since we've been back in action. Coming out of COVID, that was a pretty tight time for us, the Lighthouse Preservation Society, but the summer has been great. Yeah. We had so many wonderful visitors.
So that part that fell off, that was actually a relatively recent, coating. Was it like concrete that was put on there? I think not that many years ago, relatively.
That was from the 80s, yeah.
From the 1980s, yeah. So it wasn't like original 80s, to the lighthouse.
90s, that's when the Park Service kind of took over the tower and did a lot of restoration.
Yeah, so it wasn't really like the historic fabric of the lighthouse was damaged by that, which is a good thing.
And the bricks at the base of the tower, 11 feet thick on either side, in between the column, were plenty strong. So
to back up a little bit, just talking about the visitors again, do you have any idea of how many visitors a year go there?
With COVID, we definitely had to drop down, but I'd say on average about 100,000 a year. Some years are better, some years are worse, but
sure.
We get a lot of just people year round. We're open, and we get school kids coming throughout the school year. Most fourth graders come on Long Island, so it's a big field trip for all of them. A milestone in their education.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's pretty good because I don't think there are all that many lighthouses in the country that get more than that. That's certainly up there.
A lot of people on Long Island.
There certainly are.
But believe it or not, most of our visitors are foreign, and they're traveling, and they come to an iconic Long Island destination.
I easily believe that, and it's kind of sad in a way. I'm sure if you did a survey of people who live on Long Island, the vast majority probably haven't been there, and they really need to.
That conversation happens probably every day. I've lived here my whole life, and
Yeah, that happens everywhere. I mean, I lived in the Boston area for most of my life, and the Boston Harbor Islands are, to me, a jewel of that area. And most people who live in Boston don't know there are islands in the harbor. So it's amazing to me. People who live in New York City have never been to the Statue of Liberty or Ellis Island. It's crazy. Tourists go there. Yep. When I was there, obviously I didn't get to see the view from the top of the tower, sadly. So I do need to go back sometime to experience that. Do you have any comment about the view?
Yeah, a few things. First, actually, last year we installed a live camera with our local Long Island news station, News 12 Long Island. So oftentimes the meteorologist will be giving the news and will be in the background. So you can definitely see it online.
Yeah.
And on TV. But other than that, it's every day is different. Year round is different. The snow covering the area is beautiful. The warm, flat waters of the ocean summer is beautiful. So
Yeah.
it's. I mean, I tell the visitors it's the best view on Long Island. It's one of the highest points on Long Island. You can kind of see all the various hospitals and water towers, landfills, and all that Long Island has to offer.
On a clear day, I'm sure you can see quite a few miles from there.
Yep, you can actually see Manhattan skyline very clearly on an offshore or north wind day, really, really well.
That's quite a few miles, right?
Yeah, I think 42 to the city to
Well, that's great. Yeah. So you have a beautiful keeper's house there. I think one of the nicer looking keeper's houses around. So in addition to the lighthouse, one of the things people can take in is the museum and the keeper's house, which I was really impressed with.
Yeah.
It's really, really good. You want to say a little bit about what people experience when they go in that museum?
Yeah, when you come in through the front door, unless you're looking for the bathroom like most, we have a awesome gift shop, which is managed by our volunteers. We have a main room that kind of goes over the building of the first Fire Island Lighthouse, and then how in time they built the second Fire Island Lighthouse, and then our upstairs room. I don't know if you were able to get into those. We have a shipwreck room and a life-saving service room that kind of goes over how ships crash, why they crash, and how the brave life-saving service members saved countless of lives. So amazing.
So, and of course, there's also the lens exhibit in the building. I think that is a fairly recent addition. That building.
Yeah, we have two other outer buildings. The lens building was built in 2011. The material and the labor were mostly donated, thousands, tens of hundred thousands of dollars by an awesome group back then.
Yeah.
And that happened in 2011. We got the lens back from a museum in Philadelphia, actually.
Oh.
I don't know if you heard that story.
No, I never did hear that story.
That's a pretty funny story. When they removed the Fresnel lens...
And this was what size Fresnel lens?
The first
order.
It's a first
Fresnel
order,
lens,
yeah. So they removed it as they kind of phased into electricity. And for the longest time, nobody knew where it was. And one of our volunteers happened to be at the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia.
Yep.
And they said, there was a sign that said Fire Island Lighthouse. And I guess the conversation went, hey, can we have that back? And they were very nice for storing it all this time for us. And it was in immaculate condition. So now that we had a lens, we had to build a lens building.
Yeah.
And the main man in charge was Ken Herman. Just want to say thanks to him. He made that happen well before my time, but he's still doing his thing today. He's a great asset to the lighthouse. So that houses our original Fresnel lens,
right?
Built specifically for Fire Island. It's a first order, and it's beautiful.
It is.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful lens, and it's a really good exhibit. It's a really good display of that lens. One of the better I've seen.
Yeah, thank you. Yep. And right next to it is actually the foundation of our old lighthouse, if you remember, where the original tower was built in 1826.
I imagine there's people who don't know much about lighthouses who go in there and just blown away when they see that lens for the first time.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Those lenses are at least as impressive as the lighthouses themselves. They're incredible.
When they were building the Fire Island Lighthouse, the cost was basically similar from the lens and the tower. So.
Right. I would guess, just off the top of my head, somewhere in the $15,000 or $20,000 or something like that.
The total cost for the whole project was $40,000
for the lens and lighthouse, but about half of that, close to half of that, was probably the lens. Yeah, they weren't cheap in their day, and they're worth the big ones like that are, I think, valued in the millions now.
Oh yes,
yeah. I'm sure insurance probably costs a little bit for that. Yeah, but it's worth it.
Yes.
And what else is there for people to visit? I know there's an excellent shop, for one thing.
Yeah. I was back to the buildings. We have our boathouse, and that kind of houses a lot of the equipment that the life-saving service members use. So we have a full rowboat in there. A life-saving surfboat.
Surfboat that they use in the life-saving service.
We also have a pretty controversial surf cart. I don't know if you've seen one of those before. In addition to the breeches buoy method, where they would zip line people, it was thought to make a multi-person zip line apparatus.
Okay.
And that was a little steel cart that kind of bobbed in the water.
Yeah.
But I've heard horror stories and
they didn't work so well.
Didn't work so well, but we have it, and it's great to tell the story.
Yeah.
To paint the picture of how much effort it was to save people.
Yeah. But the gift shop I was impressed by too.
Yeah, no, our gift shop team is amazing, and we're trying to do a lot of local stuff, stuff from Long Island, nautical. So we have fun there, and it's definitely a great way to support the Fire Island Lighthouse.
Yeah. As you mentioned already, you have some experience in the world of environmental and marine science. Could you say a little bit more about how you feel that field? I know it's a big range of things, but how does that tie in with lighthouses and preservation?
Well, first of all, it ties in with everything.
Right, it does. You're right about that. Yeah.
But in my mind, I'm a surfer, kite surfer, sailor, biker, rock climber. I love being outside, love moving, exercising, and I want those places to be beautiful and pristine and accessible for everyone. I want people to feel what I feel when I go to these places. And the lighthouse, being that it is, and like many lighthouses, they're all by a body of water, and essentially, I think the surrounding area of the lighthouse should be beautiful and pristine, and so should our lighthouse. And I think they tie in nicely to fund the continuation of the preservation of our lighthouse, but also just keep the local area pristine. So.
Yeah. And of course, I'm sure at Fire Island and a lot of lighthouses, there's an effort to kind of educate visitors of some of that stuff as well.
So I figure we have an awful lot of visitation, and we love every one of them. So it's a great opportunity to, hey, perhaps thanks for supporting our lighthouse, but we can support our surrounding area of the lighthouse because it's all related.
Oh yeah.
It's all important, and it'll give you a better view up top the tower with a clear ocean and bay.
Yeah. Just seeing a site like that, seeing that expanse, kind of I would think would inspire people and realize how important the environment is. Yeah. Brings it home for people. And speaking of such things, I'm just wondering. Obviously, climate change is a big thing that's going on, and I know that, for instance, our local lighthouse here at Portsmouth Harbor has been greatly affected by increasing bad storms and high tides in recent years. Do you have any issue along those lines at Fire Island?
Yeah, we are on. Luckily, the lighthouse is on the growing side of the island.
Okay.
So on Long Island, there's a current that kind of pushes sand eastward to westward.
Yeah.
And so since actually building the first and second lighthouse, as they were very close in years, the island grew 5.5 miles since. But with that said, there's storms, especially Superstorm Sandy came through.
Yep.
And completely wiped out the island. So it's a very, a fickle place to live and to be. But at the same time, that's part of it. And hopefully, just my view on it is, as I'm going to do as much as I can on my local impact, my level. So that's the best way to think about it. I think if we all do a little bit, I think it'll all work out. Yeah,
well, a lot of us feel that way. We are doing the best we can, certainly for as long as we can. Yeah. But I think we all realize what fragile resources these beaches and marine environments and the lighthouses themselves. People think lighthouses were built to last forever. Nothing lasts forever.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
But they've done a good job of lasting through all kinds of.
Long Island's or Fire Island is a barrier island off of Long Island, and the only thing holding it there is the beach grass.
Right.
It's an ever-changing landscape.
Certainly at Montauk, they fought that for years and years. Yeah, put a lot of effort and money into that over the years to save that land and Lighthouse. Yeah. I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts about how the kind of the iconic value or symbolism, positive symbolism of lighthouses can enter into lighthouse preservation.
Yeah. People come to the lighthouse because it's an amazing place to go. As corny as it sounds, it's a beacon, right? It's a place to gather. It's a community place.
Not corny.
Yeah, not corny. Yes, but no, it's. I think of the lighthouse as a community center, a place we can come together to preserve the historic stories of our past and think about what we're going to do in the future. It's a place to gather.
Yeah.
To discuss and to have fun and to enjoy, to look out on the horizon.
Yeah, definitely. Makes me think of the song "Meet Me at the Lighthouse." We'll get to that in a minute.
I have that in my head.
Okay, it's an earworm, as they say. It'll burrow into your head. So, and another kind of general question I'm thinking about. This is more in particular with Fire Island Lighthouse. Why does Fire Island Lighthouse, I should say Light Station, the tower and the other buildings there, why does it need to be preserved?
That is a great question.
Yeah, you've kind of answered in different ways already, but I'm wondering if you want to add anything to that.
So I ask visitors up top the tower when I give them the tour. I tell them that today the maritime industry, they're not looking at our flash pattern. They're not even looking in our direction, most likely. They're looking at a screen, and it's all very reliable and safe. The technology they have. And so why is this lighthouse here? I asked them that, and my answer is it's beautiful. It holds value. It's part of our history. Lighthouses, one way to think about it is lighthouses did set up the foundations of a robust maritime industry. And so perhaps we owe lighthouses. You said that best earlier. Remind me.
It was before we started recording. I was saying it's been said by a lot of people over the years, but basically lighthouses saved countless lives, for many years, and now it's our turn to save them. Yeah. And speaking of the positive symbolism and everything, my feeling in general these days is that we can use all the positive symbols we can get in this world. Yeah.
I mean, Fire Island and probably all lighthouses, it's just a place to go and think about the future, the horizons, and the past, and histories, and stories, everything. It's just a good escape, I think.
Yeah, I think lighthouses in general have a very positive energy and affect people in positive ways. Yeah. In fact, my friend and executive director of the U.S. Lighthouse Society, Jeff Gales, we talked recently, and he said it on the podcast, how his own father was having heart problems, visited a lighthouse, and he had a pacemaker, so it was monitoring his health, and it spiked in a good way the day he visited the lighthouse. And the doctor said, what did you do that day? So the bottom line with that is lighthouses have a very positive effect both on physical health and mental health for people.
Most definitely.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. Back to, as we said earlier, the lighthouse is open for climbing after that damage that happened early last year and everything. Is the lighthouse open all year?
Yeah, we're open year-round except for Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter. We are open New Year, so come on up. But we're open year-round. Our hours are 10 a.m. until 4 p.m., but we urge visitors to come a half an hour before we close if they're interested in climbing.
Sure. Do you have special events for the public?
Yeah, we have events year-round. We just had our, I think, 5th or 4th annual Keepers Craft local beer tasting event. That was more of a private ticketed event, and it's a fundraiser for the Lighthouse. Mm-hmm. We also had our Lantern Light Tour, and that's where visitors can come at night and our volunteers tell stories on their walk towards the lighthouse. Mm-hmm. And then we have our monthly behind-the-scenes tour where our awesome engineers who actually maintain the beacon and the light ourselves, we give a tour of what goes on in the background, how do we keep the power on if power fails from the mainland. And we do sunset tours, sunrise tours, and countless others.
Wow!
Today is Veterans Day.
Yeah.
So we're thanking all veterans that served, and they can climb free today at the tower. So We celebrate Arbor Day, Earth Day. We love monarch butterflies, as Long Island's a great Passover fly zone for them. So we just had the Monarch Butterfly Day. Arts and crafts all summer on the terrace, art on the terrace. Next year is going to be, or 2026 will be a very special year. We will be celebrating the 200th anniversary of our original tower being built in 1826. So we're preparing for that.
I'm sure there's some very special events.
Every weekend is full. So,
It's so cool. You do so many different events, including the evening events. I mean, to me, that's always a thrill to be.
Sunset tours.
To be at a lighthouse at sunset and or later at night. It's a real treat, and I'm sure people love those events.
We have a Valentine's Day tour coming up. So.
Oh, okay. Since we're speaking, as you just mentioned, we're speaking on Veterans Day, November 11th, but people will be hearing this later.
Right.
Any holiday type events you have?
So yes, the next bigger event we have is the Flying Santa event. It's the 22nd annual reenactment of that event. And it's a free public event. We have hot cocoa, and children will be able to see Santa fly in with his plane and his elves.
Plane or helicopter?
Plane, yep. And all of a sudden, he appears up top the tower and comes down the bottom, and kids can hang out with Santa. So it's going to be awesome. It's always a great event.
Cool. Just to clarify a little bit, because people listening to the podcast, a lot of them might know about the New England tradition of the Flying Santa. It goes back to 1929 when Pilot in Maine started dropping presents out of a plane for keepers and their families, and then very popular historian Edward Rowe Snow did it for more than 40 years. It's still done today by nonprofit Friends of Flying Santa to Coast Guard stations. So I just wanted to differentiate there. I'm sure your event is great, but people can also take a look at FlyingSanta.org and learn about that great tradition. Yeah, it's all good stuff.
Let's fact check this, but I believe in we only had a Flying Santa. In 1953 was the only year packages were delivered around this time.
That would have been Edward Rowe Snow was the Flying Santa.
And then I think that was the only actual time when the Mallards were living there.
That makes sense. Edward Rowe Snow did New England every year, did all of New England every year, but he would kind of mix it up to other places.
Gotcha.
A small number of occasions he went to the Great Lakes, to the West Coast, to Florida, to Bermuda, to Eastern Canada and so forth. So he kind of mixed it up. So I'm sure he didn't get to Fire Island often, but if he was there in 1953, I'm not surprised. That's great. So speaking of special event type of things, we mentioned the song a little while ago, Meet Me at the Lighthouse. We, of course, had a U.S. Lighthouse Society Lighthouse Dance-Off contest recently, our second annual. You guys submitted a video from Fire Island Lighthouse. Sure looked like you had a lot of fun. You were doing some serious running in that video. So before you answer about that, just tell me, ballpark, do you know how many staff and volunteers you have there at the Lighthouse?
We have under 10 staff, mostly part-time, and then we have over 140 volunteers. And they do the hard work, the fun work.
Yeah.
We rely so much on our amazing volunteers. And so
that's fantastic.
They participated in the dance-off.
Yeah.
And we just had a great time. We have a lot of volunteers with so many skills, from editing to dancing, and we have fun. So we're excited for next year.
It looked like a lot of fun, and that was the second year in a row. One was, of course, you were not part of the previous one a year earlier, but that had a lot of the staff and volunteers dancing, couples dancing in front of the keeper's house.
And we got third place the first year.
Yeah. They were both great. You had some really stiff competition this year.
It was great to watch all the competitions.
Yeah. It was all a lot of fun. So we'll be doing it again next year, but we haven't gotten around to deciding whether it'll be the same song or a different song or a variation on the same song. But in one form or another, we'll be doing it next year, so you'll have another opportunity.
Look out for Fire Island's submission.
Absolutely, but thank you for taking part in that. The bottom line was the more lighthouse organizations that took part, the better. So we're really happy you did that. Okay, so I have one final question for you. Okay, and this is for bonus points.
All right.
So far, you've got an A+, but this one's for bonus points. All right. And the question is, what is your favorite thing about your work at Fire Island Lighthouse?
Volunteers, hands down. I love the people, but the visitors too. But I just love talking to people, learning their story and learning why they come in once a week or many times more, and to just be to come to the lighthouse and share their stories, to share our history. So volunteers, hands down, they're the best.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that. And as usual, it comes down to the people.
Yep. It's all about the people. Yep.
Absolutely. Again, whether you're talking about history or the present day, this is all about the people, number one. Well, Jonathon Gaare, it's a real pleasure meeting you. Thank you for coming to my humble home in the Bluefish Boulevard recording studios today. And I think you're heading back down to Long Island this afternoon via the ferry from New London, right?
Yeah, we're going to take the ferry after. Yep.
The ferry goes to
Orient Point.
To Orient Point,
so
right.
That's on the other side of Montauk. If you think of Long Island like a fish, and that side's the tail, Orient's the tip of the tail, and Montauk's the bottom.
And then it's how long a drive from there?
Another hour and a half or so.
Yeah. Well, you'll be home tonight.
Yeah.
Well, again, great meeting you. Thank you so much for doing this. And obviously, I want to stay in touch and hear, discuss more of your ideas about. You have some really interesting ideas about lighthouse preservation, ways we can make all this work going into the future. So it's a real pleasure. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
You're obviously a great asset for the Fire Island Lighthouse Preservation Society. So thank you so much.
All right. Yep. Thank you.
You can learn more about visiting Fire Island Lighthouse at fireislandlighthouse.com. They also have an excellent online shop if you need any last-minute Christmas gifts, like a lighthouse ornament. It might be a little late to get it before Christmas, but it can be a late present.
Sure. I already have my Fire Island Lighthouse baseball cap I got when I was there. It's in fact, I see it hanging on the wall in front of me among my museum of lighthouse baseball caps here. So I want to thank Jonathon Gaare again for today's interview. It was a lot of fun getting to meet him and talk with him. To change the subject a little, Ben, you were part of the special 300th episode we did not long ago, where I had you and other people who have co-hosted talk about your favorite lighthouse experiences. Some of our listeners have emailed me with their favorite lighthouse experiences, and we're going to read one of them now.
Right. Bailey Pottabum wrote, quote, I was visiting a friend in North Carolina back in 2020, and I decided I wanted to head out to the Outer Banks to see Currituck, Body, and Hatteras. It was an amazing day. I got to climb my first lighthouse in nearly 10 years, which was the Currituck Beach Lighthouse.
Bailey continues, quote, we then traveled down to Body Island, which was closed due to the off-season, followed by Cape Hatteras that evening. We were then heading back from Hatteras when I looked to the ocean and saw the nearly full moon rising over the water. It was quite a beautiful sight. I told my friend that we had to stop by Body Island one more time to take some photos, as the opportunity was too good to pass up.
Bailey's letter continues, quote, we pulled up to the lighthouse and parked right across from it. The moon was perfectly right above the top of the tower. It was amazing. I feel like it was just a chance that it would work out, but it did. I'm very happy that I got to experience that, as I feel as though it rekindled my love for lighthouses, end quote.
Thank you so much to Bailey for sharing that memory. Ben, I think you'd agree, you can spend a lot of time planning trips like that to lighthouses or really anything else, but sometimes the things that just happen by chance are the best. I want to invite our listeners to share their favorite lighthouse experience. Just email it to me at jeremy@uslhs.org, and you might get to hear it read on the podcast. At this point, I want to mention something that's sad, but I feel I need to say it. I want to mention the passing of someone who was very special to the U.S. Lighthouse Society family. Jerry Rowland passed away recently at his home in Washington State. As volunteers, Jerry and his wife Margie have overseen the Society's domestic and overseas tours in recent years. I will never forget the Ireland tour I went on in 2022, which was led by Jerry and Margie. Some unusual health issues came up in that tour, and Jerry dealt with all of it with good grace and humor, just like he did with everything. He was a great guy and a pleasure to work with. My heartfelt condolences to Margie, their granddaughter Cassandra, who works in the office there for USLHS, and all their family and friends. So, Ben, before we close up shop for today, I have one more really important, pressing question for you. What is your favorite Christmas movie? And it doesn't have to have a lighthouse in it.
That's a tough one, Jeremy, because at Christmas time we try to watch so many movies, but I'm going to have to go with A Christmas Story. Have you
All right.
watched that? Yeah. Oh, you've seen it.
Many, many times. Yeah, it's the
What?
correct answer. Go ahead. Yeah.
Why that one is so special to me is because growing up, the character of the old man, which is the father in the movie, he had some things in common with my father. So it was very fun to watch it. And
Uh-huh.
now that I myself am a father, rewatching it now, I have some things in common with him as well. So it's just kind of funny, full circle.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a lot of universal things in that movie. I think, even though it takes place, a few decades ago, I think everybody can identify with a lot of aspects of it. So I agree. I was going to say that was my favorite Christmas movie, also. So good choice. I give you a gold star for that one.
Oh, thank you.
So this is our last episode before Christmas, and I want to wish our listeners a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays. We will be back with a new episode in 2 weeks. Until then, to all our regular listeners and our new ones, thanks so much for listening, and
Keep a good light.